You're already making the decision that defines your income, and you're repeating it every day. And most engineers don't realize it, not because it's hidden, but because it doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like staying consistent, doing what works, improving what you already know. That's what makes it dangerous, because nothing forces you to stop, nothing interrupts the pattern, nothing tells you to change direction. So you keep going, because the system rewards consistency, even when it's pointed in the wrong direction. And that's what locks people in, because direction is what compounds. Every role you accept, every project you take, every skill you prioritize, every opportunity you ignore, they all reinforce the same path. And over time, that path becomes your ceiling. You don't notice it at first, because everything still feels like progress. You're improving, you're delivering, you're getting recognized, but only inside the same pattern, the same type of work, the same type of role, the same type of problems. And that pattern defines your outcome, not how hard you work, but what you keep choosing. Because the decision is not what you choose once, it's what you keep choosing when nothing forces you to change. This is where most people get it wrong. They don't make one big mistake. They make a series of small decisions that all point in the same direction, toward execution, toward stability, toward roles that feel safe, and each one makes the next decision easier, because consistency feels like progress. But consistency in the wrong direction creates long-term loss. There is no moment where it feels wrong. That's what makes it dangerous. Nothing breaks, nothing fails, nothing forces you to change. So you keep choosing the same path, again and again and again, until it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like who you are. You are now someone who does this type of work, solves this type of problem, operates in this type of role, and changing that starts to feel like losing progress, which most people avoid. There is also a comfort layer. You choose what you understand, what you've done before, what you know you can succeed in. And over time, that becomes your filter. You stop evaluating opportunities by growth and start evaluating them by familiarity, which means you stop choosing leverage and start choosing certainty. There is also a risk filter. Higher levels require different decisions, unclear roles, ambiguous expectations, higher exposure, more responsibility. And not everyone chooses that, because those decisions feel uncertain. They feel harder to justify. They feel riskier. So most people stay where things are defined, where success is measurable, where failure is limited. But those environments don't scale, and choosing them repeatedly locks you into them. There is also a timing factor. The earlier you change direction, the easier it is. The longer you stay consistent, the harder it becomes, because your experience compounds, your reputation forms, your positioning stabilizes, and changing direction starts to feel like regression. So most people don't. They keep choosing the same type of work, the same type of role, the same type of problems. And that's what defines their income, not a single moment, but a pattern that becomes permanent. This is why two engineers with similar ability end up in completely different outcomes, not because one worked harder, but because one changed direction earlier and the other stayed consistent. Because consistency, when applied to the wrong path, is one of the most expensive decisions you can make. There is also a compounding cost, not just in money, but in time. Because every year you stay, you reinforce the same trajectory. And every year you reinforce it, it becomes harder to leave. Until eventually, leaving feels like starting over. And most people avoid that, so they stay. And that's where the decision becomes final. This difference compounds over time, hundreds of thousands across a career, lost without realizing it. And the worst part is, you don't feel the loss while it's happening. You only see it in comparison, years later, when the gap is already too large. So the question is not, are you working hard? The real question is, are you repeating a decision that already defined your limit? Most people are, and they don't realize it until they try to change and find out they can't. Because by then, the pattern is already their trajectory. If you understand how the system actually works, you don't just improve, you interrupt the pattern before it becomes permanent. If you want the full system behind this, it's in the description.